Wellness Show, episode 85.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. So welcome to the Wellness Show, and we have Dave Cowan on a return visit to the show. I'm excited to see him yet again. He always has some pearls of wisdom for us to share, and he's going to start the show off by getting us all tuned up. So Dave, take it away.
Thank you, Tyson. And it's been our habit, I say our because I work with my wife in all these areas, but it's our habit to invoke the divine presence whenever we launch a conversation, a session, a teaching or whatever, because unless we do that, unless we consciously devote this time to Spirit's outcome, there's a possibility that the ego will grab hold of it. And it really is that clear. We're either operating from one or the other. So I just invite everyone on this broadcast now, whether you're viewing it later or immediately, just to go into your heart space for a moment and give this time over to Spirit's outcome, whatever that is, and however you conceive of Spirit. Spirit is not concerned about our definitions of itself because it has none, but rather just our willingness to acknowledge the divine presence. So thank you for that, and that's our guarantee of a good time.
Yeah, I like that. So take us away. Bring us to center.
Sure. Okay. Well, that was it. That was the invocation.
That was it.
That's all we.
Hey, I do feel centered.
It's just an acknowledgement that we are all connected to each other and to a source, and simply the willingness to recognize that. That's all you need to do.
Wow, it doesn't have to be complicated. I like that. It's straightforward, to the point.
To be fancy.
No fuss, no muss. Just show up and be you.
Exactly. In our authenticity, which of course is in our oneness. So again, thank you, Tyson, for this opportunity to connect and giving me this invitation. And you know what's been on my mind recently is, of course, I'm always trying to look for the bigger picture. I realize that when we're not seeing the patterns, it's just because we're too close to the picture. And it's very easy to get too close to the picture in today's world because we have so much information bombarding us all the time, all these distractions and dramas. We got the US election, like the Circus Maximus of the airwaves, and it's just too much for us to take in all at once. So I'm inviting everyone on this broadcast to join with me and step back a little bit and maybe expand the field of perception to include some bigger realities that are going on right around us. But again, many of us have our heads in the sand simply because it's overwhelming. What's happening right now is overwhelming. We are in an unprecedented era in history where there has never been, at least in our cultural memory, a time when 7 billion people on this planet are waking up to a larger reality together as one. This is a monumental event, and it's like a birthing. When you're in the experience, it may not feel monumental. It may feel very chaotic. It may feel very unpredictable. And yet the outcome of that event, the joy of new life, the joy of something brand new emerging in our experience, overshadows the conflicts and the stresses of getting to that point. And that's what it feels like on planet Earth, that we're in this birth canal now. And as we go through the birth canal, of course, it gets narrower and narrower. Our experiences seem to get more and more intense and more quickly manifested, and yet that to me is an indication we are working our way to that point of emerging into something brand new. So that's what I wanted to talk about on this broadcast.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I'm a little ready for some emerging myself. I mean, I feel like I've been in the birth canal a little bit too much, and I have to say it hurts. Now, what do I mean by that? I found out that the gap between my thought and the results of it are rather rapid. So if I'm not truly in my body in this moment, guess what? I get to experience pain. So I'm not allowed to have my foot in two worlds anymore. What do I mean by two worlds? Well, the way that I used to do things, which was push, shove, work hard, get things done, blah, 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 you don't succeed if you don't work. I can't do that anymore. It hurts. And yet I'm not so good at this, ease and grace, surrender to the divine, let it go, be in the flow. Wow, this is not, after 71 years of life, this is not normal for me. So learning how to do this is, I'm somewhat lost in two worlds, but not allowed to go back anymore. So yeah, this birth canal, but I like the idea that birth is inevitable. It's going to come. So thank you for that. At least there's hope on the horizon.
Oh, totally. So what I'd like to address in the rest of this talk is what I call the elephant in the solar system. And of course, this is something that we all have little pieces of. I haven't found any single source of information. Of course, I'm talking about Planet X, Nibiru, all of these cosmic events. We all have little pieces of the story, and none of those pieces are really complete because it is so vast and complex an event. But I do look at this appearance of this 3,600-year periodic visitor to our solar system as a poignant symbol of the time of change that we're in right now, and how every time that this visitor has come through in the past has always represented some degree of significant change, not only on Earth, but in the entire solar system. It's news that was actually first broadcast in 1983, when Popular Science magazine actually had it on its front cover. The story was Planet X coming to a solar system near you, something like that. And it was about the actual official recognition of this body, which astronomers apparently had suspected before this time, just like the discovery of the larger planets, the outer planets, were mathematically calculated before they were actually observed, based on the gravitational effects that they were having on the inner planets. And so astronomers were looking at Jupiter, going, there's something outside of Jupiter that is perturbing, I think is the term they use, affecting Jupiter's or Pluto's orbit. And sure enough, in 1983, it was observed directly with an infrared telescope. However, shortly after that, the news about this incoming visitor was basically blacked out. And even on Google Sky, now I'm not sure if this is true now, but for the longest time, Google Sky, the area of the sky where you might be able to observe this coming through, was literally blacked out. There is a black square in the Google Sky map saying, you're not allowed to look at this, right? And of course, it's simply because it's an event that is beyond human control. And on planet Earth, that has been the operative program, control. This is a planet of a very controlled experience. And of course, I'm not saying anyone's a victim. We've all chosen to show up here. But I remember reading years ago when David Wilcock was being interviewed, and he was talking about the 26,000 year cycle of the solar system around its gravitational twin in the Pleiades. And this is a cycle that's recognized by many ancient cultures, mistakenly identified as due to the precession of the equinox. That's how modern astronomers explain this cycle. But in fact, our solar system is part of a series of stars that in a spiral fashion rotate around Alcyon, the central sun of the Pleiades. So we are very energetically connected to the Pleiades, literally and gravitationally. So David Wilcock, anyway, mentioned that every 26,000 years, as we complete this cycle, we also pass through an area of space where it's highly energized particles, gamma radiation, and energized space. A lot of plasma, which is a name for just electrically activated space. And that at 2 points in the 26,000 year cycle, we pass through this band. Now, this band is, in fact, a vertical pattern. In our experience, it's a vertical column of light, you might say. But if you trace it back, it loops back into the galactic center, kind of like a band of electromagnetic energy. And there's a number of them apparently around the center of the galaxy. And we predictably in our cycle, in our position, are now passing through this band. This is just one of the activating factors going on at this time. So they asked David Wilcock, well, this is an opportunity for humanity to ascend to a higher level, for evolution to take a leap. Why didn't it happen the last time we went through? What happened before when we were in the same basic energy? And his reply, and I think he derives a lot of his information from the Law of One series, which is a very deeply scientific, metaphysical set of channelings that came through, I believe, in the 1980s from a being who described himself as Ra. He said that the last time we went through the cycle and through this photon band, we did have an opportunity, the potential was there for the planet to literally ascend from a third density to a fifth density planet, but the consciousness of humanity at that time was not capable of sustaining that activation, and therefore it fizzled out. And it actually fizzled out the last 3 times through this cycle. However, he states, and again basing this on the Law of One material, that this time around, it's our turn. And one of the reasons why in the previous cycles humanity was not able to take advantage of this activation was that Earth herself was a, you might say, repository for civilizations in other planets in the galaxy that ascended to the 5th dimension, but the populations on those planets that couldn't make it for whatever reason, they needed more third density experience. They were not yet ready. They were not ready to graduate, you might say. Well, they were sent here. They were sent to Earth. So Earth, from that perspective, has been like the penal colony of this quadrant of the galaxy.
Prison planet.
But now the prison planet. But now that prisoners are getting organized, we're recognizing that we, in fact, do not deserve to be imprisoned or controlled or limited in any way, because we're all divine beings. And of course, that's what we're waking up to. So this is our turn. And for me, the passage of Planet X is a very tangible symbol of this activation. In the past, it has, of course, represented significant cataclysmic changes, not only on Earth, but in all of the planets. I mean, think of this visitor as like a cue ball when you're playing pool. It's the cue ball's over here and all the other balls over here. But if you smack that cue ball in the direction of all the other balls, chaos emerges. Mm-hmm. Hopefully controlled chaos, right? So we have a solar system where we have weird things going on here. We have Venus spinning backwards compared to all the other planets. We have Uranus spinning on its side rather than on a vertical axis. Even Earth itself has a tilt, 23-degree tilt. We have a field of rubble between Mars and Jupiter, where mathematically, gravitationally, there should be another planet. So we got a lot of anomalies in the solar system that could be associated or explained by this occasional visitor. And we're not talking about a single planet, although the terminology implies, Planet X. We're talking about a miniature solar system. We're talking about a brown dwarf star, which is a star that is in a sense, it is burning out. It is losing energy, but it has a very high gravitational and electromagnetic field. It's very charged. It's got a strong positive electrical charge. And then around this burned out brown dwarf, they call it, we have about 7 planets in orbit around that, along with a lot of debris and asteroids and other kinds of things. So we have a miniature solar system passing through our solar system now. Now, in the past, again, this has been a trigger for cataclysmic earth changes, continents rising and falling, tsunamis, the whole bit. And some of the things that actually prophets and people have predicted over the ages as happening now as well. But of course, we're still here. And a lot of the predictions for cataclysmic earth changes have not come true. And my understanding is that it's because we're absorbing the transformational energy that this body represents on the mental emotional plane. In other words, we're accepting the challenge of the breakup of our fourth dimensional or astral existence, and therefore the third dimension, the physical earth, doesn't have to take the hit for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, but hopefully it makes sense to the listeners. So what about this whole thing around the fear of Planet X and Nibiru and Inky and Enkel and, all of that sort of stuff? I mean, there's a whole backstory to this that, watch out, they've been here before and, they actually genetically screwed us up and, we're not light beings because it's all their fault and, on and on and on. What about that story?
Well, we have been colonized, and of course, all this came out to light in 1976 when Zecharia Sitchin wrote The 12th Planet, which was really the first in a whole series of scholarly works about the effect and impact of this system and the beings that came from this system. And again, anyone who's interested, that information is available. My understanding is that the Anunnaki, the beings associated with Nibiru. Now, Nibiru would be one of the planets of this visiting star. That they did come here. They did jump onto Earth around 400,000 years ago with the intention of colonizing Earth, primarily for its resources. They weren't really interested in much other than the gold and the platinum, etc. And that they were dualistic in the sense that they were like us. They were a humanoid, but very advanced scientifically, but still in a state of duality. And what I mean by that, there were positive and negative aspects to these beings, to this species. Unfortunately, the negative faction of that group kind of got the upper hand as far as the impact on humanity, and therefore set the template for the abuses of ancient empires of the past, who took that model of colonization and just continued to expand it over the earth, going all the way back to the ancient Sumerians. Before that time, most of humanity were content to live a natural life in harmony with nature as hunter-gatherers, etc. It was the influence of these beings that organized humanity into large city-states that could be basically used for the purpose of resource, gathering of resources and warring with neighboring tribes whose resources you wanted. And this is the whole template of colonial expansion, which we're still living under the shadow of that system. I call it
good job. We're doing a very good job of that.
Yes, oh yes. When we do something, we do it all the way. I call that energy or that aspect of the Anunnaki the wounded male archetype. But remember, in duality, nothing is completely dark and nothing is completely light. It's like the yin-yang symbol. Each contains the seed of its opposite. There were positive aspects to the Anunnaki influence on the planet in the form of the positive aspects of civilization, you could say. Language, the arts, music, science, and all the riches of cultural benefits throughout the ages are the positive side, you might say. They gave us a fast forward boost, you might say, in our development, but at a price of control. And at this point, I think I want to share, if I may, a dream that I had well over a year ago. I don't think I shared this one. If I did, stop me. But it's a dream that put all of this together for me. And it occurred when my wife and I had returned to Southern California, where we'd started out together. And it was a kind of a journey of completion. It felt like sort of a full circle kind of a thing when we went there. And I had a dream on the first night we arrived. And it was one of those dreams that was so vivid, so impactful. You knew you had to write it down and remember it, and that it was a very rich opportunity to understand things on a deeper level. But in this dream, I was in a small town, could have been anywhere really in the world, I suppose, but I had a sense it was North America somewhere. And in this town, there was all kinds of chaos occurring, particularly in the form of blue helmeted soldiers everywhere, marching in trucks, just milling around. And I knew in the dream, blue helmets, oh my gosh, that's the United Nations. this is something global. This is a big deal, right? And as I was looking around, I saw an older gentleman standing outside of his house, leaning on his garden rake, looking confused and going, what the heck has happened to my town? And next to him was a female military officer who it appeared like she was trying to calm him down and explain what was going on. So I walked over to eavesdrop, which you can do in dreams. And at a certain point, I interrupted the conversation and I directed the question to the military officer, the female officer. I said, why is it that you, and by you I meant the military government, the whole control paradigm, right? Why is it that you are in such denial about the presence of UFOs? Come on, 50% of the population has had an experience. Other countries around the world are acknowledging the presence of our ET neighbors. What's the deal? Why do you treat us like children? And she looked at me and she said, oh, and these are her exact words, oh, you must be of the philosophy of Ophiuchus. Now, in the dream, I knew what she meant, because Ophiuchus is the 13th constellation in the zodiacal system that was taken out of Western astrology about 6,000 years ago. And it was part of the attempt to obscure the memory of our galactic connection, of the divine feminine, you might say. And because Ophiuchus, it turns out, also known as the serpent holder, is the constellation, it's still there, just because we deny it, didn't go away. It's the constellation that lies directly in alignment with the galactic center. In other words, when you're thinking about Ophiuchus, and when you're in alignment with Ophiuchus, you are in alignment with the galactic center. And the galactic center symbolizes the divine feminine. Galaxy, galactose, milk, right? The Milky Way. So we're really talking about that feminine aspect, the spaciousness of creation through connecting with that galactic center. But it was denied, along with many other aspects of 13. For example, the Gregorian calendar of 12 months. Well, before that, there in the Jewish calendar, there were 13 months, based on the lunar cycles. And that was all changed and denied, and we're reduced down to a 12-month calendar. So, and there's many other examples of the denigration of the feminine through the clearing away. 13 to us is considered a bad luck number, right? So anyway, she said to me, oh, you're of the philosophy of Ophiuchus. And what that meant to me was she was recognizing, oh, you understand things the way they were before we took over, right? And as she said this, a freedom fighter, that's all I could call this person, they were dressed like a proverbial terrorist, came up behind her and assassinated her right in front of me with a rifle, right? And I was in shock. I was, oh my gosh, there's something really horrific going down here. And as she fell, as she crumpled in front of me, her facial expression clearly said, it was like a recognition. Her facial expression said, oh my God, and we were wrong, weren't we? This has been a big mistake. A kind of a realization as she went down, right? And I'm standing there going, what the hell? And then I look out across the town. It was a small town, so just a couple blocks away, I could see the hills in the background. And marching into town were 3 giants in full regalia, like the capes, the flowing hair, the beards, the whole bit. They looked like the System Lords from the Stargate series, if you remember that on TV. And I realized in the dream, and of course looking at it a little while later, I realized that they represent the positive side of the Anunnaki, the good guys. There were 2 lineages, right? Basically the lineage of Enlil and Enki, right? They represent the lineage of Enki, who were Enki was the scientist who actually feels indebted to humanity as our father, so to speak. He was the scientist that upgraded human DNA back in the mists of time to bring us up to slave status, basically. But my understanding is that the Anunnaki realize that they need to come back and finish the job, that they left humanity in the lurch, and that in doing so, we are dooming ourselves through this continual expansion of the wounded male archetype and the colonization of this planet, to the denigration of nature, of animals, of natural human societies, that they would be responsible if we actually destroyed this planet because we're following their template. So they are back now. And my understanding from some of James Gilliland's work is that these Anunnaki have actually called to I don't know what the word is, but they've addressed the negative ones and said, you guys really blew it, you're out of here, goodbye. And they have replaced them as far as energetic influences on this planet now. So they're here to help finish the job of human development and lead us to a civilization that can be a reflection of our higher nature rather than the wounded male archetype. So that's why, in my mind, this passage of Nibiru has deeper implications, because of course that also represents the home planet of these beings and perhaps their opportunity to return now in a different role, in a different light.
I love that. And my own experience in all this would confirm what you said, that the karmic debt of being responsible for a civilization like the Anunnaki doesn't go away. And as the planet Earth goes through this ascension process, they're going to be trapped in the lower densities unless they clean up their act and their protege, which is us. So it makes perfect sense to me that this is the time, this is the place. And guess what? We signed up for this. We're all part of the planetary cleanup crew. And it's great to know that we have our Anunnaki brothers or sisters or uncles or descendants here to help us. So that's good news. That's a good news story.
Yeah, it is. And I have to mention the work of Neil Freer, Freer, for those who are really interested in following through on this track. But Neil Freer is a scholar, I believe, from the Santa Fe area, and he's one of the only authors that I've come across who has addressed the psychological aspects of being prisoners and finally being given your freedom. It's not easy to accept freedom when you've accepted such limitation and even genetically imprinted with the belief that we are limited beings, that we need to be told what to do, that we need to follow orders, etc. So he's really talking about a psychological rift that's occurring on the planet now between those who are afraid to leave the cave, who are afraid to leave the prison. Even though the doors are being flung open, the prison still represents for many the known, security of the known. Whereas, in fact, it's an invitation for us to free ourselves. Now, none of these things are being done to us. And when the prison door opens, it's still up to us to decide to step outside and to claim that freedom. So that's what we're seeing on the planet now, is those who are afraid to leave the known, the past, and those who are saying, what the heck, the future can't be any worse, let's go for it. So what I think many are anticipating is that these events, and we're talking about a convergence here, not just the passage of Nibiru. And by the way, if anyone has trouble accepting this is going on, just go to YouTube and type in Two Suns. YouTube is alive now with live video and commentaries and pictures of two suns being observed primarily out of the southern hemisphere, because this planetary system, or the Nibiru system, has actually gone by the sun once and is coming back around now, and it's coming up from below the plane of the solar system. So it's primarily observable now in the south. But people are seeing these two suns, and out of the blue, not having any foreknowledge of what we're talking about, recording this and reporting this. And some of the pictures now are stunning. You'll see our sun rising or setting on the horizon, and then you'll see this other body almost as big, not too far away. And some of the pictures now, you're actually seeing the planetoids around this second body.
Wow.
So we have some pretty solid physical evidence now that this is occurring. But this is only one aspect of the convergence of cycles that we're in right now. As you and most of your listeners know, we're also in the time of no time, right? The ending of the previous time wave in 2012, according to the Mayan calendar. And when a time wave ends, it implies another one is beginning. Well, that new time wave has not yet fully arrived. We're in the catching our breath phase, which in my experience seems to be a 7-year period. And I'll explain that. As you know, and both of us, we work with clients with dowsing.
Just
Okay.
we have 1 minute.
We work.
And this is really exciting. And I'm thinking, well, I think we need to continue on with this. So I don't, that the 1 minute is, we're near the half hour mark.
No, I would be speaking.
But
I'd be speaking so fast that no one would understand.
So what I'm thinking is, let's make this into 2 parts. So let's finish off that thought, and if you're willing to go on, we'll make this into 2 1/2-hour shows. So take her away.
Certainly. Yeah. So it's an exciting time now, but we are in a period of catching our breath, recognizing that the past is over, but the new future is not fully arrived. And it is an opportunity now for us to get our priorities straight. Which direction do I want to face, the past or the future? And we're all free to make that choice, absolutely free. No one is dictating our experience other than ourselves.
So there we are. So that's part 1 complete.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.